We need to be clear about the calendar. It's the end of August. September is days away in Russia. Winter is not a metaphor, but a system test that lasts for months. Each year the war's logic adjusts to the cold. Both sides accelerate strikes on energy infrastructure before the first deep freeze. This year is different in kind, not only in degree. Ukraine is no longer harassing Russia's energy sector, it's trying to switch it off. Between July and August, Ukrainian drones have forced an unprecedented share of Russia's refining capacity offline, with repeated hits rather than single pin pricks. Facilities in Samara, Krasnodar, Ryazan and elsewhere have suffered fires and shutdowns. Reuters running tallies put the impact around 1 million barrel per day mark in August, with the Ust-Luga export terminal cut to roughly half capacity after pipeline damage. This isn't nuisance, it's systemic disruption to the choke points that turn crude into domestic fuel and cash into the war budget. A word on Ust-Luga. It's the key Baltic outlet that feeds Russia's shadow fleet and hard currency lifeline, and halving its operations hurts export volumes and squeezes regional storage. When a coastal terminal coughs, the ruble catches cold. Ukraine has shifted from the tour of targets approach to a strategy of repeat visitation. Hit, assess repair cycles, and hit again until units go dark for months. The effect compounds at the regional level because many oblasts depend on a single large refinery for gasoline and diesel, and the result has been local shortages, price spikes and lines at stations. And reporting out of Russia's Far East in August described outages and rationing as refineries went offline. This is the summer pain, winter multiplies it. 2 escalators make this worse for Moscow. First, pipelines and pump stations are now fair game. A strike on the Unecha node in the Druzhba line disrupted flows, irritating Hungary and Slovakia and forcing ad hoc fixes. Second, Ukraine is testing longer-range, heavier tools made at home, and Kyiv says its new Flamingo cruise missile has entered combat use specifically to reach deeper and hit harder without foreign restrictions on range. If production ramps, expect refineries and compressor stations well beyond drone range to become vulnerable to Ukraine's targeted response. Russia's social contract rests on 3 pillars: cheap energy, wages paid, and distant wars kept distant. 2 of those are wobbling. The Kremlin is already triggering and triaging fuel so that core cities feel little discomfort while peripheral regions queue or go without. That breeds the exact resentment you would expect in places that have already absorbed disproportionate conscription and poor policing. Shortages in Vladivostok will be spun as patriotic sacrifice. By the 3rd week of January, sacrifice becomes blame. Companies are blinking too. Rosneft's first half net income is down 68% year on year. Management blamed lower prices driven by OPEC supply, but fires, shutdowns and export snags are not kind to margins either. War economies can bully balance sheets for a while. Cash flow still matters when you must repair complex kit under sanction. And there's a historical risk. Few outside the industry remember what parts of Russia's network went offline in the early 1990s. Winter cold damage, mothballed wells, pipelines and valves. Well, it happened. Freeze, thaw cycles crack steel and ruin elastomers. If Ukraine forces large segments to shut down as the hard frost sets in, the damage is not measured in days of repair but in years of replacement. In the 1990s, Western capital and know-how helped restart the system. Today, the political and commercial incentives for that rescue do not exist. Western majors have learned how quickly assets can be expropriated or sanctioned, and the calculus has changed. This is the writing on the wall Moscow most fears because it outlasts a news cycle and a campaign season. The point is an inference from public history and current sanction dynamics supported by the sources on present damage and export constraints. And what of China, often cast as the safety net for Russia? Beijing will buy discounted barrels and LNG, yes, but it has slow-rolled the big prize that Moscow wants, power of Siberia too, precisely to extract price concessions. When one side is a price taker and the other a monopsony, aid looks like a squeeze. Recent coverage of Putin's dealings and meetings with President Xi and Modi holding hands underscores that reality. Talks continue, terms do not sweeten, expect more haggling, not salvation, even if there's hugging in public. Energy strikes are not a substitute for air defence in Kyiv or shells near Robotyne. They are second front that they're a second front that increases the enemy's cost of fighting while dulling his logistics. Reuters has already noted that gasoline shortages appeared alongside disrupted processing and exports, and if Ukraine can keep air defence radars and depots under pressure in Crimea while pushing refineries and pump stations into repeated downtime, it creates a winter of triage for Russia. Heat, cities, fuel, armour, or feed exports. One can juggle two balls, three get dropped. Regimes fall for political reasons, but on physical timelines. The Kremlin can decree mobilization, it cannot decree refinery throughout the country, or it cannot restore pump temperature. It can censor headlines, it cannot hide cues, and the more Moscow shields the capitals, the more it alienates the regions that send sons to the front. That is not a Western narrative, that is a thermodynamic one. And there's also a diplomatic dividend. Every refinery fire that blacks out an oblast sharpens arguments in Delphi and Beijing that Russia will sell more volume for less later because it must. Partners exploit weakness. They do not repair it for free. So three things should steady Moscow. First, a warmer than average winter that reduces heating demand. Second, a rapid Russian surge in air defence coverage around critical energy nodes. And third, a negotiated operational pause that gives engineers a maintenance window. The first is weather, which won't bend to Putin's demand. The second requires chips, radar and trained crews that Russia keeps losing. And the third depends on concessions Putin has shown no interest in making to Trump. None are reliable hedges. Putin is doomed. And why the wall matters now? This phrase can be overused, but handwriting is legible. A state that once called itself an energy superpower is being forced to ration fuel in summer while its largest firms report collapsing profits and its best export terminal limps at half speed. That is before the hard frost. Ukraine has discovered a pressure point that works and is adapting with domestic long-range weapons to reach deeper. And those long-range weapons will not be frightened of the winter chill. The calendar is doing the rest. Winter is coming. And in Russia, winter writes policy. And this time, it may also write history.